that time, we had 56 employees when I started, and from that January to May, there were 356. From July till current, we had 380. So I've done some math to give you an idea. I've had 736 opportunities to fire people. Okay? So I want to be clear out there that I have only fired, terminated, non-renewed, however you want to use the term, less than a little over 0.5% of our personnel, representing less than 6 employees. So any wholesale talk about terminations being wholesale across our system, we are talking about 6 or less terminations since I've been there. I take that responsibility very seriously. I do not just on a whim decide to carry that out. And I can make assurance to this board that many steps are taken before something like that happens. And so again, I wanted that to be out in public, that we are looking at 700, in my terms, over 700 opportunities to let somebody go over my term, and I've let a total of 5 go. If anything in my profession, that's a very low number. If anything, quite frankly, in any organization, that's probably perceived as a lower number than what's probably even the natural progression. So I wanted to just let you know that, yes, there is an issue at Oasis High School in terms of our teacher retention, our teacher attrition, our teacher turnover, whatever myriad of ways that we want to call that. But I will also tell you that I am confident in the leadership, I am confident in the staff members that are there, and I can assure you as the system leader that we should see our retention rate return back to a normal point of where it was in the past. I can also tell you, though, that as a system leader, although we've taken it off the agenda, I was going to mention the fact of fundraising and some other things that we need to do so that we can make sure that our employees are paid adequately. They're never going to get exactly what they all deserve because they put in so many hours. But I want to make sure that this staff knows that during this last year and a half, or 20 months that I've been here, every staff member has had my personal phone number. Every staff member has had the opportunity to come visit me in my office. Maybe some staff members have visited and not heard what they liked, which is my support of the principal. But I will tell you, I stand steadfast in my experience and my time doing this job and in my experiences previously in a variety of ways to tell you that I am 100% assuring you that I am confident in what's happening in the high school. Does this mean that we don't have things not only within our high school and our other areas of our school that are perfect and rosy and as we say, Tinkerbell fairies and all that? Absolutely not. We have issues that we need to address. And we've been doing that consistently for 20 months since I've been here. Every day, it's a whack-a-mole. We open up a new area of some area that we need to take hold and take charge of. But as the leader here, I will do that. I will continue to converse with you. Nothing will be behind the scenes, and everything that I do is out there. And as you've probably by now had a chance to see, you have the opportunity to have my ear at any moment. You have an opportunity to provide me your say in whatever goes. The last slide that I'd like you to leave you with, and it's sorry, but I think it's important enough to see again, is again going back to the number we're talking about, system-wide, because I think a true measure needs to be system-wide. This is the number of teachers in our system out of roughly starting at about 145 5 years ago to about 165-ish around now that we've lost over time. So not to mitigate that, not to say that we would like that number to be 10 or 0. We would like that. But I certainly can tell you in other systems that I've been at, they would be happy to have a number like this. So again, in defense of our system, and not trying to sound defensive because we have other areas, but I think it's important for you to know, A, I'm not terminating people wholesale, and B, we do identify the issue that we have at the high school, but we are going to work on it and continue to work on it over time. We are all about continuous improvement in our system. This is part of why we've adjusted and redone the strategic plan. This is why we've invited Advanced Ed to come and review our system. And this is why we are even undergoing currently an internal audit, because I think all those are areas that I'm willing to open up and take a look at how we can do it better. So with that, at this point, my presentation's concluded, unless there's any questions anybody has.
Thank you very much. I asked for data, and I got data, and I appreciate that. I see at least one person wants to comment, but I just want to ask real quick. It's my understanding that we don't do exit interviews. Was that part of the Neola policy? It was like this much. It's
not part of the Neola policy, but it's practice of what we're going to be doing. We're going to change that practice anyway. But I also would caution that part of the data, because when people leave, whatever that data is may reflect one thing, and they may use the rationale, for instance, is I could say, why are you leaving our system? I could say, well, I'm leaving because my spouse got a job out of state. But then later, I could also go and say, well, I left because I wasn't happy, or I left for a myriad of reasons. So yes, we will collect that data, but even in that data, there is some questionable collection. Just so you know, I wanted that to be clear, because yes, we should stick with what people say, the reason they left, but I also want you to know that that can change from the moment they say it.
Also, I just think it's a good time to gather information, input that people might be
Other
afraid to
reasons.
share
Yes,
under employment.
absolutely.
Ms. Boyer?
I just wanted to compliment you in terms of the thoroughness of your report. I know it was probably many, many days that you worked on this, but I appreciate all the information and the time and effort you put into it.
Thank you.
Mr. Zivkova?
I'd like to make, I guess, two sort of separate comments, and I'll try to keep it short. But as an employer, there are many reasons employees leave, and I understand that. And this is sort of for background, and because we've been questioned by outside folks. It's a case by case almost always. Many factors influence this decision, both on the employer side and the employee side, and they aren't always negative. Once I helped an employee purchase a car, only to get notice 2 weeks later. It happens, things change. You're going to hear different things from employees after the, as you mentioned, for the exit interviews. And there's always two sides to the story. Is basically what I'm trying to say. That's okay. Thank you. So as an employer, it's the big thing to remember, or for the public, is that there are always two sides of the story. As a board member, this board is aware of what's going on, and I think there was some insinuation that we might have been asleep at the wheel, and I take that personally. I hope I was not appointed just to sit up here and look pretty, because that would be a poor appointment for that reason. But I was never approached by anyone. And what I'd like to ask is that if there are concerns about something like this, that we go through proper channels. And we're not here, I put a lot of time and effort into this. And if I'm doing it for nothing, I have other things I could do. So I would request that any member of the public, the council, the mayor, anyone who would like to talk to us, come to us and ask us for information, and we'll be happy to let you know what we know. So we can save Mr. Stevenson and our staff countless hours of needless work, in my opinion. That's it.
Amen. Ms. Boyer?
Amen to that.
Anybody else? Mr. Stevenson, did you have something to say?
I'll let Mr.
Okay.
Fisher, then I do.
Go ahead,
yeah.
Sam.
Yeah, Mr. Stevenson, before you in education, what was your background? Out of curiosity, just for the
Absolutely.
public.
I started out wanting to be a city manager, and I wanted to get out of the politics, so I always think that's, but,
That's hilarious.
so, sorry. So, yes, and I ended up teaching at Edison State College for over 10 years in American government, state and local, which I heard some of the students talking about, their need for that, international relations, political science. And then I ended up being got a master's in public administration. To pursue that, I started work on a doctorate in public administration, and then as I was teaching, I thought, boy, I love this career. What would it take to be a teacher? So I started that, went back and got that degree, and then said, what would it take to be an administrator? And went back and got that master's as well in ed leadership, and here I am today.
So it sounds like you've been in, you've had a lot of experience with administration and management. I think you would agree with that. What, from your opinion, from your training, your experience, your education, what happens when there's an administrator that changes? What has been your experience?
Absolutely. It creates a vacuum immediately, not only from a personnel perspective, but even in the community, because people rely on and get to know, and a great example is with Mr. Hooks leaving. And I mean, we'll just put it out there. When Mr. Hooks sent me that text, I lost the rest of my hair, okay, everything that I had when he had been talking. And so that immediately, guess what happened on my phone and on my end? Oh my gosh, the charter school system's imploding, we're never going to be able to recover. And you know what? It is a huge loss, and it is a significant loss. But in those times, you're going to have staff members also that are going to start to question, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And they're going to not like different leadership. So in my experience and in history, it has been that there is turnover related simply to the fact that you have new administrator, period, regardless of the reasons. And in some cases, I've had staff quit before they've even had a chance to work with an administrator, just simply on basis of what they've heard or something like that. So that is also part of the history here as well, yes.
And for the board up here and for the public, I don't know those of you that have experience in an agency or administration. Previously, at one point, I was a state administrator, and I had to take over an agency that had some issues. And one of those things is me being a new administrator. I had to make tough choices, and part of those tough choices were people that I'd worked with before, and including friends of mine. I no longer kept around because the message had changed. And in order to move forward sometimes, in order to do what is necessary, you have to do what is in the best interest of everything. And to those of you that have run a business or anything to that aspect, understand that. And people don't like change, and people don't like new policies. But in order to move forward, sometimes that's what occurs. So I myself haven't been approached by any of the teachers. I got a few emails over the past couple of days. I have not been approached by the mayor or anyone else on city council in regards to this. I would kind of echo what Mr. Zakovich said, that I think even so I've heard there's been an explanation that there wasn't a meeting, but I believe most of at least our emails are publicly accessible. I believe that's correct, right? On
Yep.
web pages, and most of us are pretty easy to get a hold of. And I would encourage anyone, if it's the public, city staff, the mayor, council, besides obviously Ms. Cosden, so Sunshine, but to reach out. And we're always, all of us are happy to talk, and we do want to know what's going on. So, and I appreciate the time and effort you and the rest of the staff have put into this.
Thank you. Mr. Zivkovic.
Last comment, and I just want to touch on that. I think that's, you were heading towards the culture of an organization, and I think we have, there have been some changes, and it's exciting for the feedback that I've gotten from parents and students, is that there's a new level of energy and excitement and purpose, especially in the high school. And Mrs. Treese is infectious with her energy, and it doesn't take, it takes one person to sour a culture or to be a negative influence, and to stop progress. And I congratulate Mrs. Treese for having the gumption to make decisions that administrators prior to her didn't make. That's not an easy decision. I'm a little saddened because the reasons I heard from previous administrators is they didn't want to create this nonsense, and I said, well, that's not going to happen, and I was wrong. And so, Brandon, when you want to go into politics, good luck. But thank you for the culture you're instilling. And again, the board is aware of what's going on. We're around the schools. We talk to our administrators. We talk to our principals, and I'm looking forward to this year.
And I would just like to pass an olive branch to anyone on either city council, anyone in the community that would like to take a moment to either tour the school, ask information. We did receive a public records request. I would be happy to share information without the public records request if it's a city, issue. We can certainly do that, and I want to resolve that. And I also wanted to just put out there that one of the things that was asked about was my potential hiring, and public records request was pulled about my potential hiring. And I just want to assure everybody in the community now that I knew absolutely nobody, and part of process of my hiring, I competed against a field of 25, 30 people originally that would narrow down to 4 or 5. And so I want to make assurance to anybody in this community that although I lived in Cape Coral, I knew absolutely nobody, and my job was certainly hard fought for at the beginning, and I felt like I went through the process like everybody else. And I think that request is what alone is the thing that frustrates me the most, and I want people to know that I'm always able and willing to talk about that whatsoever. So I think if continuous improvement is out there, that's absolutely fine, and people want to ask questions and dig deep, I'm all for it. Let's do it, and let's do it together, matter of fact. But certainly innuendo and those things are not suggestive to help us move forward. So I'm extending an olive branch in context of saying I'm simply willing and available to meet today, tomorrow, anytime whatsoever that anybody would like to discuss anything related to either teacher retention or any other issue. And I would also say to the community and stakeholders, meaning our parents and students, please call me. It's good to hear the bad stuff. It is, because we have to make our system better by me knowing and hearing about it, but I'd also like to hear the good stuff too. So we have a lot of great things going on. So I certainly want people to know that I am willing to be communicated with. Our entire staff has my cell phone number, and they're going to get a new email that goes directly to me. There's no intervention, no secretary. I get calls Saturday, Sunday nights. Doesn't matter. So just know that I'm 110% for this position in terms of working for it, and I'm also not afraid to dig into those things that we do have issues. And I'll always tell you the way it is, good or bad. So nothing sugar-coated.
Ms. Boyer?
I guess I just wanted to ask Mr. Buzztree if you just could remind everyone in terms of what the process should be of informing, because I know in some cases it's been one board member new, and could you just tell us what should be the process so that uniformly the board knows? So if someone is out there, whether it's the mayor, the council, city council, whatever, what should be the proper procedure that should have been followed to talk to the board?
Well, I think as the board members realize, as Mr. Fisher mentioned, there is a sunshine problem. I mean, and I think I appreciate all the board members are acutely aware of it, that you can't talk to each other, as frustrating as it may be. The chain of command is generally, if you want the board to know about it, they probably should mention it first to the chairwoman. I mean, Mrs. Cosden is the chair of the board. They should bring the issue to her. Now, unfortunately, Mrs. Cosden can't individually talk to the other board members outside a meeting. If Mrs. Cosden, as the chairwoman, thinks that it's a matter of significant issue, she could put it on as an agenda item on the next board meeting. That is the proper way, and really the only way that the board members can be apprised as a group and discuss it as a group. Because otherwise, you just run into difficulties with the sunshine law. So I certainly don't recommend that you call up each other and discuss it, no matter how tempted you may be. So that's the procedure I would recommend. Go through the chairperson of the board and have the chairperson call a meeting. Also, the superintendent can also ask the chairperson to put something on a board. I mean, if Mr. Stevenson feels that this is becoming an issue, he could contact the chairperson of the board and say, we need to put this on the agenda as a discussion item on the board at the next meeting. I mean, if it's really urgent, you could always call a special meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and also if you have, let's say a particular teacher is having an issue or whatever, what's the appropriate, instead of, let's say, emailing one board member, they should email the chairperson. Is that what I hear you saying?
Well, with that type of issue, it really should go through the chain of command. This board sets policies. You don't really get involved in the teaching.
Right.
I understand as a board member, and whether you're at the charter school or probably the Lee School District, parents will contact you. But bear in mind that's under Mr. Stevenson's purview. But the board member does have a right. If a parent contacts you, a board member should contact Mr. Stevenson and find out more information. But remember, the final decision is basically Mr. Stevenson. I mean, that goes through with the teacher, the principal, maybe a dean or assistant principal, and ultimately with Mr. Stevenson. He makes the decision. Quite frankly, if you're really, really upset with the decision he makes, I mean, I don't recommend, but you have the right to terminate him. I mean, if it comes to that. But if someone contacts you, you have a right to contact Mr. Stevenson, but you should go through Mr. Stevenson. I don't recommend you contact the teacher directly or the principal directly. Maybe I'll leave that to Mr. Stevenson. You should do it that way. That would be the appropriate way to.
Absolutely. So just to remind everyone what our responsibility are, we have the overall system, but we are not involved in day-to-day operations or hiring of teachers or firing of any staff member other than Mr. Stevenson. Thank you.
So the correct chain of command, if I'm a frustrated teacher, would be first the principal,
Yes.
and then the superintendent, and then it would stop there.
It basically stopped there. I mean, a frustrated teacher could come to a board member. I mean, that's their right. We can't stop them from doing that. But I mean, as Ms. Boyer said, I mean, you don't get involved in day-to-day operation. I mean, if you want more information, as a board member, you have a right to contact Mr. Stevenson to find out more background about it. But the ultimate decision rests with Mr. Stevenson,
Okay.
not the board.
Mr. Fisher?
Yeah, Mr. Stevenson, actually I wanted to ask, is it all right if I'd like to ask Ms. Therese a question?
Sure, absolutely.
Is your mic on?
Oh. Sorry about that. I'll lower that. Thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot. When some of this came out, I talked with some of the administrative staff, including Ms. Therese, to go through some of it, to understand it, because obviously I'm not happy, and neither I'm sure is the board with the numbers, but obviously to get a better understanding and a vision. Ms. Therese was able to provide that, and I appreciate that, and I think I have a better understanding, and there's better reasons why. Question I had for you is, outside of this board, has anyone from the public, has anyone from the city government, council, mayor, anyone asked to meet with you in regards to this, to go over revision?
I've had a few parents
Okay,
that have requested meetings and have honored those, but no one in government.
okay. Would you be willing to meet with, anyone else in the public or city government to go over any of this?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because I think that may, I think if you reiterate that you have an open door policy and that you can explain some of this, and as well to current staff and teachers, that it may alleviate some of the issues, and because I think a lot of this has been communication issues. So, and I do appreciate you making yourself available for that. So, and when I talk to you and when I talk to other staff, it did make a difference, and I have a better understanding that, granted the numbers, as we said, I'm not happy with the numbers, but I understand what they are, understand where it's going, and I see where the vision this school is going. So that's what I had. That was my question. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you, that was well said. Ms. Lucas Ross?
I just want to say, in this whole situation, and I'm a non-voting member, and I'm a representative for the parents for the elementary school, but I do have a son in the high school. So I watched this closely as a parent. And all I can keep thinking about is that 1 year does not a trend make. So I just guess, going back to Mr. Zakovic's very well said comments, this just seems so premature at this point by at least a year, because it's just one small moment in time, and there are a million reasons why this could be occurring. So my comments might be different next year.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, next year would be the time to be talking about this. I mean,
Yes,
we're talking about trends and data, and we have 1 year with a blip, so. Pasha?
I just want to say, as a side effect of this, I don't want any parent out there, any student or any teacher, anybody thinking that this is affecting our education and the education of the kids. As represented today from our ROTC and our students, it obviously is not affecting our education standards, and we rock. When it comes to bringing home the trophies and bringing home the bacon, our students are number one. So please don't confuse one issue with another issue. So great job.
Thank you, and that's a good note to end on this discussion. Does anyone else have anything? Okay. I have been asked to take a brief break, so I would like to recess until 11. That's 7 minutes. Is that going to be good? Okay. We'll be back at 11. All right, I'd like to call the meeting back to order. Next item on the agenda is under new business F, approval of requisitions for the next school year.
This year, just so y'all know, the policy, we're going to talk a little bit about my ability to sign off documents, but these 3 items represent an overage of my ability to sign off on a document. These are things like the electric bill, the gas bill, our food bill order. Traditionally, with the city, we've never brought these to you before. We're being told now that we should, and I'm absolutely okay about doing this. I think in practice, it's not a bad idea anyway, because they do go over my spending authority, but I just want you to know the reason wasn't missed on our end in terms of, not taking it seriously or something. It was just that we were told, oh, by the way, did you guys do this? And again, change, I would say, in somewhat policy, although it might have always been, we just never had. So all I'm asking for is the approval of these. These are POs. They're basically the same PO that you've had every year. You wouldn't even have known really about them. They just happen. But this is our electric bill. Clearly, they've gone through the PO process. We pay the electric company. I mean, that's the reality. There's not a lot of options there. Our gas bill as well. We pay to buy gas as cheap as we can. That right now is the lowest cost that we can find. And then our U.S. Foods with Danielle and our food service, they have been vetted, that company. They go through the whole process. They've been through all the system. This is just because the dollar amount's higher is why we're asking for the approval of this. So this will simply allow us to go ahead and pay our electric bill this year. And the reason this is interesting is it's because it's the start of the budget year. I have authority to do smaller amounts, but because it's all lumped in one, like our electric bill may be enough for me to pay individually, but they have to move this money all at one time. And once this money's moved, it passes the threshold number. And so this year they're asking us to get it board approved. And again, I'm fine with it. It's almost a technicality in my feeling. But if anybody's got any questions, I'll be more than happy to address those.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay. Ms. Donaldson?
It's not on whether approving or not. I just have a question about electricity for all the schools. Are we putting forth every bit of effort to keep our electric bills down? I know in the house you can put like the AC on a timer that when you're not there. Do we have those things in order? Every bit that we can.
We absolutely do. Matter of fact, some accuse me of turning it off even too early. So yes, we do. What I can also tell you is that we're doing little things, and I know Marianne and Danielle, I give them credit. I'm not sure where it derived from, but things like in the parking lot with the lights, we're switching over the lights from the old style to the newer style, and I'm sorry, I don't know all the technical terms of that, but everywhere that there's an opportunity for us to do that, we are. We are also, within our schools, and I know our principals are doing the same, they're ensuring that the staff are reminded to turn things off at the end of the day, lights, bulbs, and things like that. And also, we're going to switch ultimately to, a big savings will be the projectors that we have in the room, the style now that are old, they were new when I saw them, and they project onto the wall much like these here in this room. We're ultimately going to TV type projection like what we have behind you there. So with that means these bulbs are not going to be purchased, and the expense of these are the bulbs. They end up costing quite a bit of money. So as we move into technology and looking at things we're doing, that in itself, those things will turn off automatically. They're more like your TV at home, in other words, versus these that run really hot bulbs that cost a fortune when they go out and if somebody leaves them on. So the answer overall is yes, we're going to do everything we can. We're even looking at a contest because we break it down by school on, which schools cut the least in their bill, stuff like that. But again, that's an organizational issue, and one of the many things that are on the list of when we hopefully can get to it, we'll do it. So
I hope that this is translated to the students, that it's a learning experience, that they can go home and teach mom and dad, oh, by the way, we could save money because we could put a timer on the hot water machine, on the hot water meter, or we could turn our air off when we're not there. So again, if we translate into that project-based learning to teach our lessons to our kids, because it all filters down.
One of our city council members is big on the solar, and one of the suggestions I had is what we had at a former school that I was at. We had a little solar array, and then in the front office, there was a TV that showed how much energy was given back to the school. It was pennies because it was a small little section, but those are the kind of things we're doing, and he's very interested in allowing some of our kids to come here and perhaps do a solar project with the city. So yes, I'd say every opportunity, and I know our principals are certainly looking for those.
Wonderful,
So we'll
thank
continue
you.
to do that.
Mr. Vice Chair?
I apologize, maybe this is a question that we might take up in H with your increasing the purchasing authority. But this is not a bill, this is just paperwork moving the PO.
Yes, sir. That's
We
all
still
it is.
pay our electric bill monthly,
Yes.
so this might not even be accurate because we haven't received our electric bill?
Well, we're in arrears clearly in our electric bill. So what we had to do, this kind of hit us out of the blue. We got this after our last meeting in June that, oh, by the way, you need to now have the board approve this. Since we weren't meeting in July, I had an option of either an emergency meeting, or what we did is moved enough money to pay our last electric bill to get us through the end of the year. And now this would be just moving that pile of money in to move forward. So yeah, the answer is, this is just going to be our monthly electric bill. You're just putting it up front in a fund.
Well,
so-
our monthly electric bill is not $92,000.
Right.
Okay,
Go ahead. Yeah.
This is a year's worth?
right.
Yes, typically what we do is we have what they call annual purchase orders, and as part of that annual purchase order process, what they're saying is that we need to bring to the governing board any annual purchase orders that exceed 100,000. So in those cases, like the electric bill, the electric purchase order, I believe it was like 110,000, so it exceeded that $100,000 limit. So he's not asking to spend $100,000 up front. That 100,000 will suffice for each of our monthly invoices. So it's for the entire year. But rather than have staff take out a purchase order every month when we have an electric bill, we just have what they call an annual purchase order. It's encumbered for that amount, and then each month we pay off of that annual purchase order.
Okay, so at the beginning of the year, we might have a few of these. After that, we shouldn't. This is not gonna be a
That is
monthly
absolutely
thing. We're
correct.
not creating a lot more work for
You got it. We're
silliness.
not going to be getting these wholesale. These are just the things that we need to do, and we'll do it once a year. And it'll be the
We
same.
need to do because the city's asking us to do.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And in practice, just so you know, in a lot of systems, that's a norm. You know, usually it's even a consent agenda item. We may want to, at some point, add that as a section, as a consent agenda. In other words, these would be the items we'd add in, and it would just be all or none kind of a thing, and that would be clearly one of those that I would suggest for that.
Okay. We had a motion and a second, so now I think we need the roll call, please.
Boyer? Yes. Cosden?
Yes.
Donaldson? Yes. Fisher?
Yes.
Zivkovic?
Yes.
Okay. Next is the approval of the new job position of bookkeeper.
I had at last meeting, you all approved a job description of a bookkeeper position, and I said, you know, maybe something will be pending. At that moment, I didn't have the correct plans. As I reflected over the summer and looked at our administrative area and some of the things that we need in areas of fulfillment, as always, we do more, we try with less. And so one of the areas that I'm looking at is, as we're getting our internal audit happening, I am assuring you that we will find areas that we will need to address in terms of having personnel handle things such as cash and buildings, things like that, in a different way. And so what I've done, what my option is here, is to try not to spend or encumber any more money for our system. So by reorganizing the custodial group and taking some of those funds would then transfer, if you will, into a bookkeeper position, which I quite frankly believe is a much better utilization of our resources. And that is no dig on the person that was doing the custodial job, did a wonderful job, but this is more of a need for our system, system-wide. This is the issue we were left with when John left, and we're still dealing with, where pieces are being done in certain places. So in my world, I'm starting with a bookkeeper, and quite frankly, down the road, it probably may require another one. At some point, I'm just going to be straightforward, but we can talk about that at strategic planning. But for now, I'd like the opportunity to hire a bookkeeper with the knowledge that you have that it's not going to cost our system any more money. It's an absorption of a custodial position, and it would be hired at the low range. So that's what I'm asking, just for that ability to do that. So again, not taking any money out of any other fund to pay for this.
Is there a
Motion to approve?
Any comment? Go ahead, Mr. Zivkovic.
That's a pretty big range you're asking us to approve, even though you tell us you hope to hire at the minimum. Why is the maximum 57?
Well, it's like any position you ever approve. There could be, I could potentially do that. That's not something that I come up with. The bookkeeper position is done through the city. That's their description, their job description. I don't come up with those money. That's the monies that they've looked at based on job studies, job classifications. So in this particular case, I didn't come up with a range. That's what city HR says, in comparable in this market, this is the amount of money that you would pay for somebody particularly doing that job. I would say it has to be some level of trust, just like, with principals or anything else, at some level.
Sure.
I clearly think that, hiring at that amount, I would certainly, my goal would be to get us at that bottom range. And my assurance is I will do that. Hopefully you will find that I'm a person of my word. And so if it comes that I can only find somebody for 57, then I would hold off. I can just tell the board that at this moment, because my preference is ultimately, again, giving my plan down the road, is probably to have another. There's so many things that are happening within the schools that secretaries are doing. Danielle is required, talk about wearing different
Yeah, the
hats.
I'm okay with the position, just the range, we're
I
putting
understand.
it at the 36 or in that lower range, I'm fine. At 57, I'm not. So I guess I'd like to see
Understand.
that
It's-
range narrowed.
I don't know if we can narrow the city HR. I don't know what that becomes that's more of probably a legal question than anything else, but that's the range that the city's determined, hiring in this range. This is the amount that they've determined. So I just want you to be clear that I did not come up with that range. I'll let somebody else
Thank
do
you.
it.
Mr.
Bustry?
Bustry?
Yes, the city has a policy, it used to be, I think, hiring at the midpoint, anything above the midpoint would have to come before city council, because the board now, they may have changed it, to the 70th percent.
75th.
The 75th percentile. The range is also given, not necessarily that's what you hire the person at. It tells the person if they stay there and they get merit raises, they could go up to that level, so that they know they're not going to be hired at, let's say, 50,000, and the range goes to 55, and wants to reach 55, because in government employments, a lot of times, when you reach the top, you don't get any more raises. So that tells them they have room to grow as they become more experienced and everything. They could get raises up to that level. Not necessarily that is where they would be hired. And I think Mr. Stevenson, I don't think you would mind, the board may wish to consider, they don't have to do it today, is allow him to hire maybe like the city up to the 75th percentile. Anything above that would have to come before before this board.
I
That
would
gives
make,
him flexibility and,
I'm going to breathe deeply and make the argument that I would hope we don't go there. But if we would like to, it's the pleasure of the board, I'll do what I can. Only in that because we meet once a month, the city meets weekly, we meet once a month, it would create a burden. What I'd be more than happy to do is provide you, when we hire people, what those ranges are. And then I would say if there's questions, I'm more than happy to resolve why we particularly hired. But in the education side, and again, it's not that I don't mind if the board wants authority, it's okay. But I think it would be very cumbersome to hire, because then we'd be looking at, for instance, a teacher position that we may want to hire tomorrow, and I'm going, oh my gosh, they're at the top, but here's why. And I don't want to necessarily have to get into that unless you would like to. And I'm more than happy to send you, even Vicky, our HR, could send you at the end of the month who we hired at what range or something like that. No problem. Any of that's fair game. So.
I'm just gonna jump in here. I'm okay with this range, knowing that the maximum is not necessarily the maximum that you will offer. It's the maximum that a person could make in this position. And if I'm looking at jobs, I like to see what's the high range of this position, because I believe you get what you pay for. And if it's in line with what the city would do, then I'm confident that, I'm not a bookkeeper, but it seems like it would attract a good employee. Go ahead, Ms. Boyer.
Well, I agree with you. I don't have a problem with the salary range. I mean, if you look at the other positions that we've advertised, they always have a salary range, and that's coming from the city, so.
Go ahead. Did you have anything else?
Do we have a motion?
We have a motion and a second. If there's no more discussion,
Okay.
we can go ahead and vote.
Boyer?
Yes.
Cosden?
Yes.
Donaldson? Fisher?
Yes.
Jackson? I'm sorry, Winstead? Sorry. Zivkovic?
Yes.
Okay. And the next item is approval to increase the superintendent's purchasing authority. And go ahead, Mr. Bustry.
Yes, if I may, I think my memo is self-explanatory. This Charter School Authority follows city purchasing policies under city policy, the city manager has purchasing authority up to $50,000. That was initially the superintendent's limit. Because of the operational requirements of the school, he needed a greater authority, and this board at one time did approve $100,000. When the Neola policies were promulgated, unfortunately, that $100,000 was moved back to $50,000. So we're just asking to restore his former authority. And if I may, and ask the indulgence of the board, as an item F, I would ask that if the board would allow Ms. Moniz to work with the city to reach some type of accommodation with them. As Ms. Moniz explained, those are annual purchase orders. For example, I think the purchase order for electricity is around $480,000 annually. Obviously, Mr. Stevenson is not going to approve $480,000. The city finance department thinks that if the actual blanket annual purchase order is $480,000, he could write that amount. Because the board does not meet in July, and for example, Ms. Jensen needs to order food supplies, not the entire budget, but she needs to order usually a lot of food supplies at the beginning of the year. I think it would be helpful to work out a policy and procedure with the city that either maybe in June or sometime you could give blanket authority so that these purchases can go through and not be delayed, because delay can be crucial to operation of the school. So it's two separate issues. That issue would be brought back to you later. If I hate to do this to poor Ms. Moniz, that policies and procedure to how we could resolve that issue. But right now, you only need to approve increasing the superintendent's purchasing amount to $100,000, and that will be reflected in Neola. That will solve some of the problems, but not all of the issues.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to return the superintendent's spending authority to $100,000.
Okay. Discussion, Boyer?
That was just going to be my question, if somehow we could include this, the electric, I mean, these are vital things that shouldn't have to be postponed. So if we're going to come up with
Maybe
some
by
kind of,
consent of the board, just authorize Ms.
Right.
Moniz to work with the city, because we will bring it back to you to see what policy and procedure is, so we could do it maybe in May or June, so it doesn't affect the operation of the system, because during July, when you're off, that's when many of these supplies and goods are ordered and everything,
Yes,
I think.
absolutely.
so by putting it on the agenda, let's say for May or June, then that would solve the problem
That would
for
solve,
next
that
year?
would solve the problem, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so,
If we'll bring
And-
that back to you, depending on what the city.
And I just want you all to know, we would have done that,
if
kind of
you
had
would
we
have
known.
known.
Just, it was
Right.
not like
This-
an
that was a
oversight.
new
It just changed, that's all.
This is new.
requirement
But we
imposed
weren't
by the
meeting
city.
again, so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I have.
And my question on that, I mean, we have the budget, we're in line with the budget, so we've already given approval.
That's where I
But-
was
Yes.
with it, but
So I don't see that we need to do anything. We've
Well,
got an
the city won't
outside,
release the funds, that's the problem. I mean, that's
The
the
city
problem.
won't,
I mean, I understand what you're saying, Mr. Zivkovic, and normally that is sufficient, but the city, for some reason, for these annual purchase orders, think that that Mr. Stevenson could purchase the whole amount at one time, and obviously he wouldn't and he couldn't anyway. But if the city policy, the problem is if the city doesn't release the money, the school system can't purchase anything.
do we
So
need a motion for Ms. Moniz to do that?
I
First, we
guess-
have to vote.
We didn't vote?
Well,
Sorry.
yeah, I know.
okay.
And then we'll do a motion for that,
Okay.
so that you know that we have it on record.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so if there's any more discussion about the purchasing authority, okay, let's take a roll.
Boyer? Yes. Cosden?
Yes,
Donaldson? Fisher? Zivkovic?
Yes.
okay, now someone can make a motion about I
I'll
don't
make-
even know, what should the language be?
I'll make a motion to allow Ms. Munoz to work with the city to come up with a process that understands our budget needs in the summer, and to remove any roadblocks that would prevent us from purchasing items such as electric, food, and other
Necessities?
Yes.
necessities in the summer.
I'll second that.
Okay. You can go ahead, Shannon, I don't think there's any discussion.
Boyer?
Yes.
Cosden?
Yes,
Donaldson? Yes. Fisher? Zivkovic?
Yes.
okay, thank you. Moving on. Next item is approval of the 2016-17 wellness policy.
Good morning, Danielle Jensen, Director of Procurement and Food Service. One of the requirements of the National School Lunch Program is to annually review and implement our wellness policy. We had our meeting in May where we met with a variety of participants, and the results of that meeting must be discussed today. The wellness policy is a tool that we use to help promote student wellness, prevent and reduce childhood obesity, and provide assurances the school is following the minimum nutrition guidelines set by the federal government. This establishes goals in 3 key areas: nutrition and physical education, and school-based activities. Some of the facts from this past school year is that school enrollment was up 2%, and applied participation was up 3% to 39%. The National School Lunch annual claims was just under $525,000, which is actually up 9% from last year. And our total revenue was over $1.1 million, which is an almost 7% increase over the previous year, and that's the best we've ever done. So I'm very proud of that accomplishment and the hard work that my team has done. Some of the accomplishments we've done in other areas is that we expanded the boot camp experience from Krista to the Oasis Elementary, and I know the kids really enjoyed that experience. Krista also had a very successful walk-a-thon fundraiser in the fall, and this was actually, I think, one of the first times our school system actually used physical education as a way to raise funds, as opposed to doing like selling candy or cookie dough. And that's something that we are looking to expand at Oasis Elementary. They did very well. They raised a lot of money, and the kids really enjoyed that experience. Some of the ongoing goals that we would like to continue is to offer breakfast to all of our schools. It's required at the elementary, but we would like to do it at all. We continue to emphasize the qualifications of the food service staff by providing annual training to everybody. We met all of the state requirements regarding physical activity education and student evaluations. We continue to promote nutritional education, communication on our menus and our websites. We continue to provide healthy screenings and gym membership subsidies to our staff. We have been sponsoring walking and running clubs in our elementaries, and we also sponsored several 5K runs across the different campuses. So this reaches not only our staff, but the community out there. And OAS sponsored a successful jump rope for Heart. All these things are helping to promote physical education. And our elementary schools is one of the few schools in the area to promote a bike rodeo that included safety awareness for our students. We also continue to maintain the menus based on the strict federal requirements. One of the new goals that we are looking to do this next year is we are going to offer salads and subs to our Oasis Elementary students like we do at the middle and high school. We feel this is a good way to start introducing this to students. If it's successful, we would like to expand it to Krista in the next year. And there is one change that I had provided to you, is that we need to update the physical education requirements, just the wording. We are already currently following the policy, but we want to make sure it's consistent with Florida state statute, and sometimes you continue to do things and you forget to update that. So I provided that in the memo. That was the last page, and it's just changing that. So I'm glad to answer any questions you may have, and I am seeking approval of this policy for the next school year.
Is there a motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, Ms. Boyer?
Excellent report, as usual. I just want to point out on the last page, on page 9, where the signatures are, you still have Todd Baldwin on there. You might want to, he's not with us anymore. Just take him off.
Well, he was a participant in the meeting at that particular time.
Oh, so that's at the
Yeah, those
particular
are the
time,
people,
not
yeah, 'cause we actually
signing
have students, we have parents, we
Okay.
have administration. He was in that meeting at that time.
at that time. Okay, I apologize.
Nope, that's great.
Okay. If there's no more discussion, can you please call the roll?
Boyer? Yes. Cosden?
Yes.
Donaldson? Fisher? Yes. Zivkovic?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on, we have approval of the 16-17 adopted operating budget.
Sorry about that. I was just trying to get settled. Good morning, Mary Ann Monas, Business Manager, City of Cape Coral Charter Schools. What I tried to do was I've distributed a memo to each of you, And once again, take that memo and just put it into a presentation format, just so we can focus on any key items that may have changed from our tentative budget to our adopted budget that we're seeking approval on today. So the first thing I'd like to cover is this chart that summarizes the requested fiscal year 17 budget. As you'll see under the revenue or revenue category section, our revenue estimate under the assigned funds or use of fund balance, I apologize, has increased to $4.944 million. That is a significant increase for us, and that is our cash balances. And what caused that to increase basically was the money that we had left over from the previous year, and it moves into the new fiscal year. So we've done wonderful in that respect. That's a 29% increase greater than last fiscal year, or $862,000 greater than the original proposed budget. On the intergovernmental line, that reflects a $936,000 increase over our proposed budget, and that's primarily due to our increase in FEFP dollars, which reflects $71.16 per FTE. They finally released those numbers. So for each FTE we carry, we would be receiving $7,178.49. Just keep in mind that our major revenues are budgeted at 96% conservatively. So based on our number of enrollment, our student enrollment, we would be eligible for that $7,178 per student or for full-time equivalent. On the capital or PICO dollars, as previously mentioned, the state had issued a 50% increase across all charter schools to $75 million. That equates to $227,000 for our charter schools, again budgeted at 96%. What we use this money for is to offset all of our debt service. And then charges for services, we had a slight decrease of about $1,900 when compared to last fiscal year. And that is due basically because we see that our revenues are declining in our transportation fees. Many of our schools are not taking in that $3 transportation voluntary donation money that we had agreed to last year or the year before. So we're not seeing those contributions any longer. Under miscellaneous revenue, it reflects an increase of $82,000 since the budget was proposed. That's primarily associated with the $100,000 project that the city has agreed to give us that funding. We're still working on those projects. How they've decided to do it is that we take out the purchase order on the school side, and then the city will reimburse us. So what the city reimburses us goes into revenue, and then we budget on the expense side. So it's an even wash, but it does increase our revenues. So overall, we're looking at a 6.6% increase to the revenues from our proposed budget. If you look at the table below, personnel, and I know that table's a little small, but our personnel costs are decreasing about $119,000 from the proposed budget. What's impacted the personnel fees is we had actually received some new FRS rates. Our FRS rates increased from 7.27% to 7.52%. While on the other hand, we've had some drastic workers' comp decreases, which offset a lot of that, as well as we have the reduced custodial supervisor position, and we have some salary cost savings associated with some of our folks leaving and bringing in new folks to replace those positions. On the operating side, we reflect an increase by $72,000, and again, that's primarily the $93,000 that was added from the city's $100,000 for those items that are still outstanding. We had a donation on the Krista McAuliffe side for about $4,500 for a smart board. So that's now in revenues, and it will be offset again on the operating side. And then, if you may recall, when the budget was proposed, we said that we still needed to true up our final insurance costs. So our insurance costs reflect an increase of $44,000 from what we previously had. But the good news is that while we piggybacked on the RFP through the city and we follow what the city does now, we actually have a savings to our insurance of over $200,000. On the capital side, we had a pretty significant increase of $469,000 from the proposed budget. But I have to tell you that $413,000 of that is associated with the IT program that the governing board approved, or the infrastructure program that the governing board approved last year. The problem is that work needed to be done by June 30th, and it wasn't. So what ultimately ends up happening is those dollars now need to carry forward into fiscal year 17. So we didn't spend the money in 16, but we anticipate that program will be finished, and we will use those funds to pay for them in the new school year. In addition, there was 56 associated with the city, 100,000 in that capital area as well. I'd like to focus on reserves. Those increased by $1.5 million. Out of that, we set aside $1 million, as we discussed at our last meeting, or at our last proposed meeting, and we will be taking that $1 million and setting aside $500,000 to begin planning for the Krista portables, as to what we're going to do with those. Are we going to remove them? Are we going to expand? We don't quite know yet. That's something that we need to start following up on within the next strategic plan or the next year, to come up with a plan as to what we'll be doing with those portables and what would be the best fix for them. In addition, out of the other $500,000, out of that $1 million has been set aside for infrastructure needs or computer needs, information technology needs for our teachers, new computers and things like that, as well as any building upgrades. So that summarizes that table, and as to why the dollars may have changed from our proposed budget. As you know, enrollment is very important to our system because our major revenues are linked to our enrollment. So the higher our enrollment we have, the more money we receive from our revenue funding sources, such as FEFP. At current, there was no change from proposed to what we're requesting for adopted. There's a total of 52.83 FTEs. I will tell you, I personally am not feeling confident that we'll meet those numbers. I've had discussions with some of the principals. They are trying to fill those seats as fast as they can, as good as they can, but no sooner do they fill them, they may have one that drops out. So with that said, if we don't meet our enrollment numbers, it will impact our revenue estimates. So what we plan to do is, once we get our final FEFP numbers in place, we'll do a review of that, and if we need to do a budget amendment, we'll do the budget amendment at the first quarter of the year, of the school year, to get everything balanced and in line. That's it there. On our staffing summary, no change on staffing with the exception of one position that was eliminated from the administration area, and that was for the custodial supervisor. So we have a total of 423 employees in the system for the new year. And again, I just wanted to recap on the changes from our tentative to the proposed adopted budget. On the revenue side, we had a $4,500 donation from the Krista McAuliffe School to purchase a smart board for our students. On FEFP, again, those rates increased by $71.16 per student, or for full-time equivalent. That totaled approximately $936,000 across all of the schools. Reimbursable revenue included $93,000 from the city for the $100,000 project, and then we increased our cash balance by $862,000. On the expenditure side, payroll, we experienced some salary savings by bringing new people in at lesser salaries. We eliminated the custodial supervisor. We did have an increase to FRS, like I mentioned, from 7.26 to 7.52, and then we had some pretty significant reductions in workers' comp. We also were able to give our employees, if they were here less than 5 years, 2.5% increase. Greater than the 5 years, they received 3.5% increase. On the operating side, there was an adjustment to various lines, such as building maintenance, some equipment, to cover some of the balances of that $100,000 associated with the city, because it was not all capital work. And then we had a $44,000 increase to our insurance to get that in line. On the capital side, again, we increased it by $413,000 to cover our IT equipment project. That sums up the changes. So I would recommend or request that the Cape Coral Charter School Governing Board approve this budget for adoption.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion?
Basha made the motion, I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion? Go ahead.
The, in terms of the city's money, have all the POs, have we met the requirements to get the whole $100,000?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. I think we missed it by maybe $1,500, but we're still not finalized with those projects, so that slight difference may.
We can find.
Yeah.
And it's probably not for this discussion, but I'd like to, if the mayor and council are so concerned about our retention, perhaps Mrs. Cosden can go back for another $100,000 this year, so we can help keep our teachers, because we need so much help. I think if we can have something to the effect of what we've done with that $100,000, why it was needed,
That would be great.
our additional needs that we have. If we look at our population, this is from just a global perspective for the city as a whole, as well as for our system. If we look at the population moving into Northwest Cape Coral, the need to remove our portables at Crystal McAuliffe and the potential for that expansion, this is something that the city should be paying attention to, because we're going to have a lot of students up there that need to go someplace. And I know if we rely solely on Lee County, they've got their own issues building schools. So this is something that I think, looking forward, I say it half jokingly, but that $100,000 or some other funds, or the ideas of start having the city council planning for the growth and what we're going to do is important. We've created a gem of a school system in Southwest Cape Coral. Southwest Cape Coral, their property values have reflected that, whether anybody wants to admit it or not. So I think, going back to our city for some additional assistance is not unreasonable at all. And in terms of economics, there aren't many ways we can spend those dollars better than on educating our population. So, there you go, Ms. Cosden. You can take the ball and run with that.
I am just going to come out here and say, I think we have a difference in philosophy. I greatly appreciate that the city, before I came on, gave $100,000 to the system, but I don't support continuing to ask. While I clearly see that we have I wouldn't call it a shortfall, but there are so many needs that we have. I don't think that the answer is to ask the city for money, and I know that will probably be unpopular, but that's where I've always stood in terms of the charter school system. I mean, I remember when it was created, I was a reporter. I covered the first charter school governing board meeting, and the whole goal was to be self-sufficient. So I think we need to spend more of our energy badgering the Lee County School District, badgering our state legislators to change the policy.
I appreciate the councilwoman's honesty very much, and that's excellent. And it's good. She's one vote of many on the board, so.
Right, absolutely.
So,
and if the board directs me, I mean, I'm just one vote, so if
well, you're one vote on our board and one vote on the city council board.
Exactly.
So, right. So, that's not a dead end. And,
Yes.
but I'm sincere, and I appreciate your
That's true.
honesty and where you stand on that. We have, and this is, I don't want to hijack this for the fundraising discussion we'll have next time, but going to the city or other routes, and in addition, as you said, Lee County, the state, and other places, I think we have to take an all-of-the-above approach. So I'll stop with this, but that's something I would like to see us, at least with that first $100,000. Ms. Moniz, back to this specific discussion, you said you had enrollment concerns?
I do. I think that when we budgeted or estimated the number of students, the enrollment, what I typically do is I ask the principals what their enrollment numbers will be, and they provide those numbers. And then as we go along, or get closer to the adopted budget presentation, I go back again and say, what are your enrollment numbers? One in particular area, and maybe the dual enrollment thing will help cure this, but one, and I'm not picking on Ms. Treese, but one area is the high school, that I was given a number of 765 students, and when I had spoken with the information specialist last week, they were at 740. And they had mentioned every time they increase it for a student, they lose one. So they're trying their best, they're working to get the numbers where they are. But my concern is that even historically, after the first couple weeks of school, I always tend to see a decline in enrollment. So I'm not saying that she's not going to get there, but it is a concern that I would have expected the numbers to be a little bit higher at this time, especially with school beginning.
Those numbers are taken for the purposes of funding. They're taken a couple times a year, correct?
The ones that I use are an estimate, so I know.
But for the actual funding?
For the actual funding. And then what happens is once the numbers are entered into the system, and then the Lee County School District gets those numbers, they're able to calculate what our actual funding will be. And then from there, I do a comparison of how many FTEs we said we were going to have, how many they have, and then after that first quarter, kind of true it up.
And I'm sorry, so their census is drawn when?
Right now, the IT people are entering in their numbers. They do it through the first 10 days of school.
Okay.
So after the 10th day of school.
And then they do it again
And then
later
they
in
do
the
it
year, right?
again on, I think it's every, yeah, there's like 4 times a year that they do it.
The FTE.
I don't know what the dates are off the top of
So
my
that's just
head.
something we'll keep an eye on.
Okay,
Yeah.
Nelson.
I have a direct, I'll take responsibility for this one, that when we were estimating at this time, one of the things that we were estimating was the fact that we may have extra space up there based on an office rental. So that is a direct result of that. Now, what we could have done is just backed out the numbers. What we're hoping in anticipation of having more dual enrollment and some that we can absorb. So there may be a potential lowering of her number, but it has nothing to do with students not interested or not wanting to attend. It's more a matter of, we shot kind of for the stars, and remember, we thought we'd have that upstairs space to add a classroom. So that's ultimately my responsibility there, to make sure that you all know it wasn't that Ms. Tree says, oh, I can raise the enrollment to whatever. I anticipated about 20 growing because of that space up there. So I anticipate that we will be better than what we are, but I agree with Ms. Moniz that we're probably not going to reach the target, but we'll do our very
And we
best.
can adjust, we just adjust it.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Boyer?
I had a question in terms of, that we have a waiting list. How does that work in terms of, like, for example, now the high school, what kind of waiting list did we have? Is that, or is it too late to tap into any of
They are tapping at every opportunity they can. The issue that we've got is because it's a small high school in terms of all that they can offer.
Right.
We may have somebody waiting on the wait list that wants to get in, but perhaps there's 3 courses that we can't offer them because that's what they want.
Okay.
So that double hurts them. And then also this year we had an interesting occasion where for whatever reason, another group was allowed to come in and recruit in one of our buildings, and that's an internal matter that I'm dealing with, but we've lost about 15 students from about 20, 8th to 9th grade. So that will be shored up also next year, that we won't have that happen again. So there's just some mitigating factors, but yes, we have a wait list across the board, but we also have an internal. I'll give you a great example. Donnie Hopper and Jackie Collins are also always having these conversations of which parent, they may want their child to go here or there. So we're also even battling that enrollment. But yes, we have a robust waiting list. But at high school, it's a little bit more difficult because, again, the kids may need a certain thing that we may not offer. So even though they're on our list, once they get to that spot, we say, well, we don't have this or that, then that student, then that's why we're saying we're getting them and then we're dropping them sometimes, because they may want a particular course that we can't offer, or an elective or a singleton class, they call it.
Okay, and the other comment I had, back to Mr. Z's comment about funding from the city council. Since I've been here, one of the big issues has always been that we don't get the property tax, the portion that we should be getting, because of the way that the wording is done by the state. You know, Lee County, since they don't have to, and I don't blame Lee County, they're not giving the proper amount of money. So I think until we finally get the wording changed at the state level, I think then that property tax money, that would be, I'm guessing, a significant boost to, you know, to our system, and properly reflect all the kids that are coming, you know, staying in Cape Coral and coming to our schools. So that was just my comment there.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Z.
In terms of enrollment, I just want to put this out there because it ties into our previous discussion on retention. I think some of the comments that were unfounded and used over the summer was that our ACE program was going away. So I'd like to take this opportunity again while we're on TV to explain our ACE program is alive and well. It's continuing and it's not going anywhere. And that's been the intention of the high school principal all along. It was repeated, but unfortunately some of the employees that have left us probably didn't do us any favors on the way out, even though they said they loved the system. So just want to put that out there.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, we're good to vote.
Boyer? Yes. Cosden?
Yes.
Donaldson? Yes. Fisher?
Yes.
Zivkovic?
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Next item is final board comment and discussion. I think I'll just ask everybody to please put your light on if you have a comment. If not, I won't call on you. And I'll just go in order. So the first is Nelson. You're not a board member.
I'm not allowed, but I snuck in, and this is why I've waited to this point to say it. I just wanted you to know the dedication of our employees. I wasn't able to send you an email yet, but Shannon and Marianne have some family things occurring right now, and that I didn't want to mention clearly before they got a chance to speak, and I mean Shannon Arthur. So their willingness and dedication to be here today, you'll find out later what that is, but that just shows the integrity, the strength of character, and those kind of things for our employees, and so I can't say enough. Thank you for going through it, a personal thing, and being able to be here for us. So I just wanted to give them both kudos for being here as they're dealing with those things.
Thank you. Mr. Fisher.
First off, wanted to thank for the in-service the other day at Oasis High School. I had a great time, and the staff and everyone was very animated, very enthused, and I appreciated that. Looking at everything that's happened, I want to thank the administrators, especially Mr. Stevenson, Ms. Therese, and everyone for taking the high road on everything and looking out for what's the best interest of the school and the kids. It's become an unfortunate political football, and it shouldn't have been. And I want to thank you for everyone stepping up to the plate. And I think as part of that, we all believe and have faith in you. And Mr. Buzztree may not like this, but I'm going to ask for a second on this. And I think it's a little bit more of a ceremonial thing. But as Mr. Stevenson, as someone that reports to us as a governing board, I think we need to do this to show that we're heading in the right direction. And I'm going to ask for someone else to second on this. A motion, I will be making a motion to ask for a vote of confidence in Mr. Stevenson and the administration at the moment. And the reason I ask for that is, if we're going to continue and we believe that we're heading the right direction, we as a board need to put essentially our money where our mouths are. And it's on us right now. And we shouldn't let these administrators get bullied, and they shouldn't have their names dragged through the mud. And I know, and the rest of us, support what they're going and what they're doing and their plan. So I would ask for a second on this. I know it's a bit unorthodox, but
I'll second that.
Lots of lights on, but does anyone want to discuss this specific motion? Okay, we can take a vote.
Boyer?
Yes.
Cosden?
Yes.
Donaldson?
Yes.
Fisher?
yes.
Zivkovic?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I want to thank the board for showing a unified front and, more importantly, looking out for what is the best interest of the schools and, more importantly, these kids. And thank you for what everyone's doing. I appreciate it. And thank you, the rest of the board members.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. That was good. Ms. Lucas Ross.
Two comments I want to make. First, I just want to comment on, it's been a trend this past year. I've been on the board, I don't know if I'm starting my 4th year, I think, on this board as a representative, but this past year, we have had students come in to show and talk about what's going on in the schools. We had STEM, we had the students today, we had the internship students, we had the students where they were going to college. It has been so wonderful. I know this board is unbelievably active and involved day to day in the schools. Everybody who sits on this board knows how excellent that these students are and this system is. But this, bringing them here, one, it feels good to me to watch them. I almost cry when they come up there. And two, it displays to the community who does not have the benefit of going into the schools all the time what's really going on. It is excellent. I hope that we make time for this, as many meetings as we can. And thank you for whoever's responsible for having this happen all the time. The second thing I want to say, Mr. Hopper left, but I'm excited to have him on board. I know the parents are. I spoke to parents last night. There are some of them who are upset that they didn't get a chance to meet him because the line really was. I couldn't talk to him last night. It was very, very long. So there's a lot of excitement and buzz about him. Mr. Stevenson, thank you for the process of hiring that position. Mr. Stevenson invited the teachers to be a part of the process, and there were quite a few of them there, and I spoke to them at the lunch break. They felt valued, they felt empowered, and what a nice way to go about hiring an administrator is to involve the stakeholders in it. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zivkovic.
Thank you. I'd just like to also add, the students unfortunately left, and they are fantastic speakers, but I want to thank them and thank you guys for bringing them and renewing my hope for our future. It is impressive, to see these kids and the things that they can do when they're given the opportunity and they're supported by their families and their teachers and educators. As adults, we unfortunately deal in a different world sometimes, and as we get older, we get hardened, but to hear kids at such a young age speak so eloquently and have great ideas, it is inspiring. And so thank you. And please let I showed up for the afternoon session on that, but our teachers, I hope they know that what they're doing is so important to keep that light lit in those students, to help them understand they can make a difference by keeping that optimism. It really does work. So thank you very much. Welcome to Mr. Hopper. He's not here, but also thank you to Mr. Hook. Mr. Hook had a fantastic tenure in the Oasis school system, and I know he's one of the reasons my family came to the Oasis school systems. He was a great leader for that school. He's built, I think, a lot of the foundation. He's helped support the culture that we've had of the loving and nurturing teachers, and I'm excited to see. I was concerned when we got the message, obviously, when someone of that stature leaves, but by the response we've received after Mr. Hopper was announced, it's just another step that, for me, I feel encouraged that this year is going to be a fantastic year in a lot of ways. So thank you, Mr. Hook, and good luck, Mr. Hopper.
Thank you. Pasha.
Ditto to what everybody has said up here, and I think on behalf of everybody up here, I just want to wish, and we all wish everybody at all the schools a wonderful 2016-17 school year, and we are here to help in any way, shape, or form. And again, all I can say is you all are great.
All right. If that's it, time and date of the next meeting has been changed. It will now be September 22nd, 2016 at 9 o'clock. Location to be announced. Is that okay, Mr. Bustree? That we're not, okay. Location will be announced tentatively, the Yacht Club. So, and with that, the meeting is adjourned.
All right.